So I may have gotten a little ahead of myself. I don't remember the last thing you've seen. I think the last thing that I showed you was me taking the engine out and calling it a day. Well, here's where we're at. So the engine is in, finally. It is in its final resting place. Transmission obviously is in there as well. Intake is just sitting on there. You can ignore that. Valve covers are just sitting on there. I'll get into that kind of stuff in a minute, but it was kind of a pain to get in, even with the fender out, the core support out, all that stuff being, you know, out. It was still a very tight fit. Naturally, you're putting a V8 into a small S10, but when I test fit just the engine without the transmission attached, it was actually a bigger pain than it was when I put it all in as one piece. But yeah, so it took me about 30 minutes probably to get the engine and transmission unit in. I will say I'm using a Hayes 3/4 race twister converter. I'm not sure I'm ever going to use that again, use that brand again. It's very, I'm going to flip this. There, that's better. It was a very odd fit. I did get it in, I got it seated, all that stuff, but there's a proper gap between the flex plate and the converter pads. And this one was sitting at like almost a ½ inch. It was like 0.43 and some change. Now, you know, using a washer or something like that to space it out to make sure it doesn't pull out of the pump of the transmission, that's normal. But this was a huge gap. So I actually called Holley or Hayes and was told that, you know, I had the right converter. This was the converter for a 4L60E, which is the transmission in this truck. You know, the bolt pattern was right, the size was correct. I still question whether or not it was the right converter because, like I said, it took me, I had to make quite a large spacer for each pad. And on top of that, so standard thread for a converter is M10 by 1.5. Whatever the thread was on the converter was not that. I don't know what it was. I actually had some converter bolts from an older converter and transmission Chevy, but I had some of those later and I tried that and that didn't fit either. So I ended up just retapping the threads on the converter. What's going to happen is this thing isn't going to work, but we'll deal with that when we get there. I just want to hear the stupid thing, you know, start up and run. So headers were in. I put it in with the passenger side header already attached. I left the driver's side off and didn't put that in until the engine was in. Getting it to line up in the mounts wasn't too bad. Yeah, overall it wasn't a difficult thing to get in. I am still working on getting, well actually what we're going to do in this video today is we're going to put the transmission crossmember in. I'm probably not going to do that on video because being under the truck is just kind of hard to do with a camera, but we will be doing that, which that's over here. So I did go with the Holley Blackheart transmission crossmember. Using this with the motor mounts, the Blackheart motor mounts allows the use of the hooker headers that go into a full exhaust. I've actually heard some sound clips of the exhaust. I'm not sure if I'm going to run that or not. It's a little too quiet for my liking. I want something kind of loud and rowdy. But like I said, we'll deal with that when we go to install it. Right now, I need to assemble and install the crossmember up under the truck. Once that is in, I'll probably go ahead and get started on the front accessories. I may go ahead and put the intake the rest of the way on. I'm still waiting on a few parts that should show up in the next day or two. I went overkill, but the Motion Raceworks steam port tube, I used that whole setup. It's a beautiful setup. It looks great. It fit perfectly, but it is definitely overkill for my needs. We got the Holley polished valve covers, which look fantastic. The Sniper Evi fabricated intake, which looks fantastic. I do know, I'm well aware that the factory truck intake probably flows and performs better than this will, but I mean, tell me that doesn't look good. Tell me, go ahead. Tell me it doesn't look good, because it looks amazing. It looks awesome. Let's be honest, you spend that kind of money on it. I mean, I want it to perform well, but I want it to look good too, and I think I at least got that aspect down. So, as far as accessories, I did get the Holley Complete Mid-Mount Accessory setup. So basically, it all mounts off this one bracket, which is your water pump housing, and then it's got the mounts all around it. So you got your power steering pump mount over here. You got your AC compressor here. Here's your water outlet, inlet, I don't even know. And then you got your alternator up here. It's all sucks it in real nice and tight. It's a really nice unit. It is kind of pricey, but I didn't want to screw around with buying, I didn't want to screw around with buying adapter brackets and things of that nature. I figure if I spend big once, I don't have to worry about it. Clearances will be good, and if I ever decide to pull this engine and put in something else, that's going to go with it. I'm going to put the camera down. I'm going to get that crossmember up. And then I'll come back when we start to assemble all of those accessories. Cool. Alright, so we got the Hooker Blackheart transmission crossmember in. Really not a lot to see. Passenger side was kind of frustrating. It was all a very tight fit. The main issue was, if you can see it there in the middle, so with this crossmember you got to use an F-body transmission mount, and with that, the studs that you use are not long enough for the 1-inch aluminum spacer that you have to use to keep the right angle with the transmission and engine. So I had to, it's actually the next day, actually 2 days since I started this project, I had to pick up some new bolts. For whatever reason, Home Depot does not carry a 7/16 coarse thread bolt, period. None, zero. So, today I stopped at the hardware store and picked up the closest thing I could get. Had to use some washers or spacers, but it works. It's solid. It does its job. So let's get out of here. Next up, I got the current performance wiring harness out, and I was just looking it over. This is a really quality piece, let me tell you. Everything is already where it needs to be. It's going to be pretty much a plug-and-play system. They've already got, back there, they got some relays already for the electric fans with the fan hookups here. The only thing I ran across, and I've already reached out, and I'm hoping they can either give me an adapter or something. They gave me the 2-plug system for the neutral safety switch, and this transmission, it's from an 03 and up that uses the single style plug, and I'm not going to crawl back down there and show you, but long story short is they need to get me an adapter or switch out the harness or something. I don't really want to rewire anything, but I will if I have to. So next up, we're going to start putting the accessories on the front of the engine, or at least the water pump, because like I said, I'm using the Holley Mid-Mount setup. So everything will mount on the water pump. So we're going to go ahead and get the crank pulley on and the water pump on and see what I need to do from there. So it's coming along. It's looking good. It's exciting. So here we go. I'm going to put this on time lapse, and we're going to get that stuff installed and go from there. Alright, so I forgot to turn on the camera, but I did go ahead and get the crank pulley installed, and the way to do that is I actually used a cheap Amazon tool. Basically, you thread that into the crank and you use these 2 washers, and it just kind of, sucks it in. And then you come back with the original bolt, if you have it, torque that down to like 250 foot-pounds, I believe, and that makes sure the pulley is seated in its home there. Take that out, you put your new bolt in because they are torque to yield. So you put that in, and I think the instructions for this one said something like 59 foot-pounds, and then you go 125 degrees past that. It can be difficult. You may want a helper, because you gotta, if you can see back in there, the starter's not in, but you will have to have some type of flywheel holder so it doesn't turn the engine over. I used some help that held a pry bar that just kind of kept it in place. That's not the proper way to do it. They do make proper tools. You can pick them up on Amazon for 20 bucks or something like that, but this worked. And I mean, I know some guys don't even use that special tool to suck in the pulley, but either way, that's how I did it. It worked. It's in there. It's seated. It's good to go. So for the rest of it, I will pop up the camera, let you watch. But now we are putting the actual pump assembly in the housing here. Pretty cool design, really. So basically, you have your actual pump assembly that fits in this housing. It is a Holley proprietary product, I believe. But so if you're going to replace it, I believe you got to get it through them. But anyway, yeah. So we are installing that, and then I think we're ready to put this whole assembly on the truck. So let's get to it. And bam, accessory drive is installed. It looks fantastic. It was very easy to do. I mean, I really don't have any tips or tricks or anything, because it bolts right on. You'll notice the power steering pulley is not installed yet. I don't have the tool. I already ordered it. It's not here yet. I know there's some ways on the internet you can get that to install without the special tool, but I've always been a big fan of having the right tool for the job. So we'll get that installed as soon as the tool gets in. The cool thing about this Holley Mid-Mount setup is that everything bolts to the water pump housing, which is awesome. And then you've actually got a couple different ways to route your heater hoses. So right now I just got the fittings on the side here, because I do believe that's where it's going to fit best for me. But there is plugs underneath where you could have ran it from bottom if you had the ability to route your own that way. I do think that I'm going to have to do something different for the power steering lines. I'm going to make my own lines. So you've got a 6AN fitting here. Obviously that'll go into your thing. My mind went blank. You know what I'm saying. I'm not going to keep thinking about it. Anyway, but I think I'm going to be swapping out the vacuum booster for the brakes. So there's no room back here to mount my coil, which is, that's common. Everybody who does these swaps on these trucks knows that. But I want it to mount there. So I think I'm gonna do a little bit of an upgrade. I'm gonna upgrade this system to the Hydro Boost setup. There's tons of information on the web about that, and I'm gonna detail it once I start that project. But I mentioned that because that's gonna change the way I route my power steering lines. Because we're gonna need to take a pressure line from here to the Hydro Boost to the power steering rack. I can't believe my mind is completely blank. But anyway, and then from there, right loop back around, you'll have your drains and stuff like that. But anyway, so we'll be doing that. I did notice I kind of set that radiator up here, and everybody knows this is a very tight setup. But with the fans and everything on there, it's going to make running the top hose interesting. I mean, it can literally come out. It can literally come out to about there. The hose. So it's going to be very tight, but you know, we'll get it sorted out. This isn't the first time this has been done. There's plenty of people that's done this swap, so if they can do it, I can too. But yeah, it's looking fantastic. It's coming along nicely. But I think that'll do it for this video. Got quite a bit done in this video. If you liked it, hit that like button below. If you want to see more of this, please subscribe. Until next time.